Get started, committee. We will open up the hearing on House Bill 2777, prohibiting an employee of the Office of the State Fire Marshal from wearing or operating a body camera during an on-site inspection at a patient care facility. Reviser Jenna Moyer will explain the bill.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee. House Bill 2777 would create a new section of law, and in this law it would state that the state fire marshal and any of the state fire marshal representatives are prohibited from either wearing or operating a body-worn camera or other audio or video recording device during an on-site inspection of a patient care facility. And a patient care facility includes adult care homes and any medical care facility as defined in KSA 65-425, which would be your hospitals and recovery centers. And it also includes a hospice facility. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Committee, are there questions for the reviser? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. Our first proponent we have is Tara Mays, Vice President, State Legislative Relations, Kansas Hospital Association. Welcome to committee, Tara.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Tara Mays from the Kansas Hospital Association, and on behalf of our 122 community hospitals throughout the state of Kansas, appreciate the opportunity to appear before you in support of House Bill 2777. Our hospitals take patient privacy very, very seriously, and while we appreciate all of the things and the good work that the Fire Marshal's Office does, we do have concern that Fire Marshal's inspectors coming in to do routine inspections wearing body cams puts our hospital staff in a difficult situation of knowingly allowing someone with a body camera into our facilities in a way that could potentially be a HIPAA violation. And of course, we are subject to all of the federal HIPAA laws, and some of those fines are very steep. And so with that, Madam Chair, we just want to say that we really support House Bill 2777 as it really clarifies what is allowed when it comes to some of these more inspectionary purposes of what the Fire Marshal's Office does. Thank you. I'd be happy to stay for questions.
We'll get through our proponents and then we'll take questions. Next, I have Kylie Childs, Director of Government Affairs, Leading Age Kansas. Welcome to committee, Kylie.
Thank you and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kylie Childs. I'm the Director of Government Affairs with Leading Age Kansas, which is the state association of not-for-profit and mission-driven aging services providers. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of HB 2777. So we first learned about the Fire Marshal's Office utilizing body-worn cameras just last month, and then we later learned they've been utilizing them since 2021. The office has reiterated to us that they did not have to provide notice to stakeholders, and this has raised a number of questions and concerns that we wanted to bring before you today, but we decided to narrow it down and focus on 6 main points. The first of those is going to be resident rights and privacy. So while we do allow cameras in adult care home settings, it is on a case-by-case basis and based solely on individuals' consent. And we feel like that would be hard and impractical to obtain whenever a fire marshal is conducting an unannounced inspection. Concerns about violating resident privacy and dignity arise with a policy such as this, especially given the emphasis our long-term care providers place on person-centered care, and this policy directly undermining person-centered care with our providers creating a home-like environment. Further, CMS has stated that providers are supposed to limit any potential mental abuse that may come from photographs or videos being taken of residents without their consent. The next thing we would like to talk about is inspections versus investigations. We do understand that criminal investigations carry a higher threshold, and we understand there may be times when a body camera is needed for those purposes, but we would argue that inspections do not hold that same weight. The other thing is that this office is contracted with KDADS, the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, to carry out these inspections. KDADS is not currently utilizing body-worn cameras for their surveyors in our adult care home settings, so we're wondering why there is a discrepancy between the two offices, and it's not consistent across both. The third, we've been talking with numerous government officials, whether that's at the federal level with CMS or here with state legislators, and the consensus seems to be that all of us have the same concerns related to resident privacy, dignity, and consent. The thing that we've been hearing from the State Fire Marshal's office is that this is a common practice, and we're going to see body-worn cameras in healthcare settings all across the state. But we would argue that we are not seeing that as a common practice. We've reached out to other state affiliates of Leading Ages, as well as our national affiliate, and they have not heard of this occurring. In fact, in Iowa, just last year, they realigned their government and removed inspectors from the office of the State Fire Marshal to a separate division, which decertifies them as law enforcement and prevents this from ever being an issue in the future. When it comes to liability and lawsuits, the Office of the Fire Marshal does have concerns with this opening the state up to lawsuits if they were not to utilize body-worn cameras. But they've also felt like this was an all-or-nothing experience for their officers. We would argue that if they still continue to use body-worn cameras in criminal investigations, but not for inspections, then that would reduce the amount of potential lawsuits that could come for the state. And we also have an independent dispute resolution process already in place for inspections for our providers to utilize. So we don't feel that there would be any further lawsuits that would come related to inspections. Additionally, the office has already stated that the liability is on providers and for us to ensure that residents do not end up on their body-worn cameras. As I've already stated, these are their homes, so that is nearly impossible to complete. So we would argue that the liability for providers with the State Fire Marshal's office utilizing body-worn cameras on inspections is greater than any potential lawsuit that could come with them not utilizing them on inspections. And really, this practice just begs the question, just because you can doesn't mean you should. After multiple conversations we've had with leadership, we have learned that until they receive a hardline no, that they're going to continue this practice. So we come before you guys today to ask you to give them that hardline no. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 2777, and I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you very much, Kylie. Next, I have Erica Steinmiller, is it Perdomo? Did I pronounce that correctly? Oh, virtual.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
welcome to committee, Erica.
Hi.
She's with the
I'm
Legal
here-
Counsel Alliance, okay, I'm sorry. She's Legal Counsel Alliance Defending Freedom. Welcome to committee, Erica.
That's correct. Thank you so much. And I'm here testifying on Kansas House Bill 2749. Just want to make sure that I'm not speaking out of turn.
What?
He has read the
Oh.
right bill. That's the next bill.
Okay, Erica, we're on a different bill. That's an error on our side. It's not on yours, so if you'll hold tight, we'll be to that bill here in a moment.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Okay, so do we only have two proponents? All right, so we only had two proponents on this. Is there anyone that thought they may have turned in testimony and that we didn't call upon them? All right, seeing none, are there questions for the proponents? I don't know if it's so much of a question, and I know we've got some written only in support of this bill as well, because we have Rachel Marsh, CEO, Children's Alliance of Kansas, Matt Fletcher, Executive Director of Interhab, Jamie Gideon, Kansas Director of Public Policy, Alzheimer's Association, Linda Mowbray, President and CEO, Kansas Healthcare Association, and Kansas Center for Assisted Living. I do know that since this bill was introduced after an individual told me what was happening in one of their facilities, that other entities that have similar concerns have approached me. I did have an amendment drafted. Let's go ahead and share that with the committee. Because we're not going to work this right now until I feel comfortable that we've got all the amendments that everybody has, since this bill has been introduced, wants to see us have debate on. So we'll hand this out, and that can also go to the public. And can you put that up on the website at some point, or can you do that? Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
What I want to do is make sure that we're covering all the facilities where privacy is a concern for whether they're considered clients or patients, foster care homes, daycare homes, and any other types of facilities. Because as you heard Kylie mention, and this has been my words ever since I introduced this bill, when an individual goes into a facility or is in a location, that becomes their home. and law enforcement is not allowed to come into their home and video without a warrant. So we want to make sure these people have the privacy that they deserve and that is expected. So I listed off the proponents, and like I said, we're not going to work this. Would you like to go over the amendment just to give everyone an idea of what we do have before us, Jenna?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to make a correction. Carly's going down to get updated copies. There's a typo on here referencing one of the numbers, so she'll bring back ones. Everything, they should say, the references should be to 382202 and instead of 382002. So Carly should be here momentarily with ones that have correct references.
Okay, that's fine.
But this would add to the definition of patient care facility, those qualified residential treatment programs, which we refer to as QRTPs, and then the PRTFs, which are psychiatric residential treatment facilities. Then there are secure facilities, which I can read you the definition from the statute, is a facility other than a staff secure facility or juvenile detention facility that's operated or structured so all the entrances and exits are under the exclusive control of the staff or facility, and it shall not be in a city or county jail. And then there are the youth residential facilities, which are homes, foster homes, or structures that provide 24-hour day care for children and licensed pursuant to Article 5 of Chapter 65. So those would be those 24-hour day things like the foster homes.
Okay. Committee, are there questions for Jenna? All right, seeing none, thank you, Jenna, I appreciate that. Next, we have written-only opponent that actually came in for Mark Engelholm, Kansas State Fire Marshal. Other than that, we have no more opponents. So I just want to give the opportunity for everyone to review this amendment. Those that are advocates that were proponents on this to review it to make sure we've covered each and every one of our facilities. And we will work this tomorrow. If sometime between tomorrow and next Wednesday, we find that we've missed one, we're still not done yet, we could take an amend on the floor. But I want to cover as many of them as we can. Is there any questions? Representative Orpesa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I know we don't have an opponent in here, maybe, I don't know if anybody would know the answer to this, but whenever a fire marshal or these types of people are doing inspections, have they ever run across a possible criminal act and need to have a camera on or need to document that in some way?
According to, I don't know, is KDHE in the room? No. According to a letter I reviewed from CMS, still cameras filming an infraction that they're inspecting is acceptable. I think the issue came down to they were concerned about complaints with their inspectors, and they felt like they were protecting their inspectors because of he said, she said. My comment to the inspector was welcome to my world and welcome to every other inspector's world out there, because that's what occurs. You just buck it up and you deal with it, because they've got plenty of ways to document. So as far as on a criminal side, I have no idea,
Okay, thank you.
but I don't think that that's their job anyway. Further comments or questions? Representative Turner.
Well, on that point, in their testimony that they filed, written testimony, it says their office routinely collects images of violations found to document them in the inspection file to clearly show the conditions found, blah, blah, blah. So that's the second from the last paragraph, because they're asking that if a bill moves forward, that it consider amending the bill to add language that would clearly state that it would not prohibit the collection of such evidentiary images.
And I'm not sure that we need that, but we can find out between now and tomorrow. Like I said, when CMS comes in and says that you can, videotape, or not videotape, but you can still picture a infraction so that you can document it to put it with your report, I believe that they are covered. Does that help?
Okay. Well, yeah, they don't seem to think that they're covered, but we'll get that followed up on. I mean, you had mentioned that they can't come into your home with a camera, but these are inspections that they're required to do of these facilities, which is a
But
little different. But
these facilities, Representative, if I'm a client in a nursing home, a living assisted facility, or in a hospital, that becomes my private space. That is my home. And they have no right to come in there without a warrant with a video camera. So that's how we're viewing this. Does that help?
it helps. Yes, I'll need to read some more, but I understand. I'm just saying that unlike your living quarters and mine, they aren't subject to fire marshal inspections, and apparently these facilities are. Is that correct?
They are, and they're also subject to other inspections, and those other inspectors are not wearing body cam. Representative Barth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a quick question. I just want to make sure I understand where it says, it just says wearing of operating a body camera. It doesn't say they couldn't have a camera and take a picture of something if it was to document it. So I think it's still okay based on what I'm seeing, but the thing I also noticed is during an on-site inspection at a patient care facility. So an on-site inspection could that be would they still be able to go, let's say there was a bomb or a fire or something like that, and that would be considered an on-site inspection, but more of an emergency standpoint. I just want to make sure that from emergency standpoint, if they're going into fire, it's not just a checking on making sure it's got the sprinklers working right. I want to make sure that covers that they can still do that if they need to for whatever reason for emergencies. Do you think it legally still does that?
You know, I'd have to check. I'm not sure that the state fire marshal is called out to bombings and that type of thing. I think that's more of the bomb squads. So I don't know that that would be an issue, but we could look at it. Huh?
That's just a fire.
Well, or, you know, even a fire, because they kind of get called out after the fact, because theirs is to determine what caused this fire. Was it criminal? Was it an accident? Yeah, but the fire marshal does get called out after the fact. So are there any further questions or comments? All right, seeing none, committee, I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 2777. And like I said, my intent was to work it today, but I would just feel more comfortable if we can make sure that we are taking care of all the facilities that we want to protect. So we will work it tomorrow. Yeah, the fire marshal was the opponent. All right, committee, let's turn our attention and we'll open up the hearing for House Bill 2749, requiring medical care facilities and providers to report the reasons for each abortion performed at such facility or by such provider to the Secretary of Health and Environment. And we'll have Revisor Jenna Moyer to explain.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. House Bill 2749 amends KSA 65445, and this is the statute that has the reporting requirements for a hospital or medical care facility, requirements to keep regarding abortions. This would add a new subsection C. And in that subsection C, it would say that in the case of an emergency, each pregnant woman shall be asked prior to the termination of her pregnancy which reason was the most important factor in her decision to seek an abortion, and if there's more than one, to rank the second and third. And of those reasons listed would be things like interfering with education, inability to afford the child, having enough or too many children, pressure from a husband or partner to have an abortion, a lack of support, or if the pregnancy is the result of rape, incest, or threatens a woman's health. And then at the bottom, this would be line 32, if the woman declines to answer, that response shall be recorded. Subsection D requires each report required by this section to include the number of times that each of those options was listed as the most important, second, or third most important. And paragraph 2 would list the number of times a woman seeking an abortion was asked about those reasons and declined to answer. Subsection E would require each of those reports to include certain factors about the woman, including the age, marital status, residence, race, education, whether or not she received financial assistance, reports of domestic violence, instability in housing, abuse or, abuse or neglect, and the method by which the abortion was performed. This would also add on page 4 a requirement that the biannual report issued would be required to be issued within 30 days after the reporting period, and it adds a subsection K severability clause so that if one part of this bill were found to be unconstitutional, in theory, the rest of this statute would still be upheld. And this would take effect on publication in the statute book, so July 1st. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions? Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me today. I have a question. So as we read this through, I'm just curious about the definition, the legal definition of woman, because in some cases you have minors that are having this procedure done, in particular in regards to incest and abuse. And so as this reads, does woman or pregnant woman mean an adult over the age of 18? Or what about in the instance of minors, in particular those that are having abortions in relation to abuse or incest? So how is that going to pan out legally?
There's not a definition of woman in the statute or in the bill. However, based upon our rules of construction, woman, I can't think of any definition where it only means above the age of 18. So it would be a person of the female gender.
Right, and so in this case, if an 8-year-old was raped and was pregnant, was seeking an abortion, that would mean that the 8-year-old was a woman?
I think for the purposes of this statute, that would be, yes.
Committee, further questions? Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is what other procedures / medications are tracked like this at KDHE?
In terms of the reporting requirements, or?
Yes, in terms of, there's a list of medications. I mean, you ran through the subsections that they have and the answers that they need to give as in type of an abortion, whether it be procedural or medication. Is there anything else in the state of Kansas that is reported along these lines?
That might be
I
a
can't be sure
KDHE
of
question.
Is
that.
that a
Yeah.
KDHE question? Okay, thank you.
Representative Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. See what page is this? Page 4. The letter or section K. Can you explain that again about what the severability means?
Yes, so this is just the boilerplate language for a severability clause. And the intention of this would be that if a part of this statute were struck down by a court as unconstitutional, it is the legislature expressing their intent that the rest of the statute would be upheld. Sometimes in a court case, if a statute is declared unconstitutional, the court could strike down the entirety of, this would be 65-445, and this would be the legislature expressing their intent that if you're going to strike down essentially what's being added, that please don't strike down the entire statute.
Thank you.
Committee, further questions? Representative Hasswood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jenna. Is there anywhere in this language where it has to be like a survey paper, or is it like an oral question, the way that it's administrated? It's up to the discretion of the healthcare provider?
Yeah, it is not specified the manner in which it would be done. I assume I shouldn't presume, but for expediency's sake, I think that a paper would be more convenient, but it would be up to the discretion of the provider.
Okay, thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Good job. Thank you, Madam Chair. I have read this bill, and I cannot find if there is an option where we can make this optional. Like, is it mandatory for a medical provider to ask these specific questions, or is there somewhere here that it says that they are able to say to the patient, you don't have to answer if you don't want to?
So the language of the bill, it would not necessarily have to be a healthcare provider asking it, but the woman shall be asked prior to the termination of the pregnancy. So the requirement would be on the healthcare facility. It could be the person who checks you in. It could be anyone. It is not required that the woman is asked. Line 32 says if the woman declines to answer, such response shall be recorded, but it doesn't specify in the disclaimer language that this was optional.
Just one quick follow-up question.
You may.
I'm assuming we already ask people who get abortions questions when the procedure happens, because I gather that the legislature loves to gather data on this. Can you give me an idea of what sort of questions are currently asked?
I think, again, that's probably a KDHE question.
great,
And I
thank you.
don't see KDHE on my list here today. Further questions of the reviser? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Jen. I appreciate it. All right, committee, the first proponent we have is Mackenzie, is it Haddix, Communications Director, Kansas for Life? Did I pronounce that correctly? All right, welcome to committee.
Thank you, Representative Landwehr and members of the committee. I am Mackenzie Haddix, Deputy Communications Director with Kansans for Life. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of House Bill 2749, excuse me. Accurate data is necessary for the establishment of policies and programs that truly address the needs of Kansans. This includes data regarding circumstances that lead to abortions being performed on women. Studies show that women have abortions for a variety of reasons, but the most common are financial insecurity or uncertain relationship status. The most recent study conducted is more than 10 years old, so having current data for Kansas is critical to finding ways to alleviate some of the pressures women with unexpected pregnancies face. House Bill 2749 puts into statute several elements of abortion data already required to be collected under the Kansas Department of Health and Environment's rules and regulations. In addition, the bill adds data collection regarding reasons women choose abortion and requires biannual reporting to KDHE. In October 2023, the Society for Family Planning published a study that disclosed abortion numbers for the first 6 months of the year and were acquired directly from Kansas abortion facilities. It is not unreasonable to require these same facilities to submit reports of abortion numbers to the KDHE twice a year, and that the data be publicly released within 30 days of the end of the reporting period. House Bill 2749 will help the general public and policymakers gain a better understanding as to why abortions are performed, and from there, policies can be crafted to better address the social concerns of women facing such an important decision. So with that, I respectfully ask the committee pass out House Bill 2749 favorably, and I stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next committee, I have Brittany Jones, Director of Policy and Engagement, Kansas Family Voice. Welcome to committee, Brittany.
Good afternoon, committee. Representative Landwehr and members of the committee, thank you for having me today. I am Brittany Jones. I'm the Director of Policy and Engagement for Kansas Family Voice. We care deeply about ensuring women receive the support and care they need throughout their pregnancies and throughout their lives. We believe that HB 2749 helps this body and others who are invested in their lives know how to care for them best. We currently have abortion reporting statutes, and we already are collecting reports on women through this process. Now, none of this information identifies them specifically or personally. This bill simply updates that information and moves what is already in rules and regulations into statute to ensure that we have an ongoing, consistent report that helps this body make decisions and helps others know how to meet women where they are. Much of the current report much of the current language that's in this bill is already part of the current report, so this is just creating consistency throughout. Further, there's a major flaw in our current statute that does not require that the report be due at a date certain. So we've seen in the last 2 years, some years it's 4 to 5 months after the end of the reporting period that the report has been made public. This past year was more than 6 months after the end of the reporting period. So ensuring that you get this information in a timely manner so that we can make decisions best how to help women and to meet them where they are is truly important, so that we really know what's going on in the situation, we know what's going on in women's lives. Now, this is not the only kind of report that we gather. There is a report on births and how how women are impacted when they give birth. There are other reports that KDHE collects. So this is not an anomaly throughout our statute. This simply arms individuals with information about how to help women, and it protects their privacy through the process. So we know that the abortion industry, just like the former proponent stated, we know that the abortion industry already has this data. This is not adding a new burdensome requirement. They have this data, and they're actually self-reporting it to other entities. So there's no reason why KDHE cannot make this available to you in a timely manner. So we strongly ask that you support this bill and pass HB 2749 out of committee at the appropriate time. And I stand ready for questions when it's appropriate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Brittany. Now, Erica, we're welcome you to hear your testimony on House Bill 2749. Welcome back to committee.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and distinguished members of the committee. I'm Erica Steinmiller-Perdomo, legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. Kansas House Bill 2749 amends Kansas's current abortion reporting law to require medical care facilities and licensed providers to report the reasons Kansas's women and girls obtain abortions and record basic demographic information. The bill ensures confidentiality while seeking to create a comprehensive abortion reporting system that will provide complete and reliable data on abortion to the medical community, federal and state public health officials, and to the general public. This information will advance public health and safety by enabling responsible medical and public health decision-making, supporting the best health outcomes for women and their children, and assessing the need for abortion alternatives and supportive options for women. HB 2749 passes constitutional muster and is rationally related to advancing Kansas's interest in protecting maternal health and safety. Indeed, abortion record keeping and reporting provisions that are directed to the preservation of maternal health are essential to promoting maternal health and safety and contribute to medical and public health knowledge. Current abortion data is often inaccurate and misleading because of deficient state and federal reporting systems. So a comprehensive state abortion reporting system is really necessary to adequately safeguard the women in Kansas and to develop policy initiatives that better support women and their families. But this bill could be strengthened by requiring reporting of complications and injury resulting from abortion. As a result of deficient reporting systems, the injuries to countless women who have been harmed by abortions are effectively being swept under the rug. It's essential that the medical and public health communities have access to accurate health information and information about abortion and its potential risks and complications. So we would strongly urge that HB 2749 be amended to require reporting of abortion complications as well. Thank you.
I don't. Thank you very much. Committee, that's the list of our in-person proponents. You do have written proponents from Lucretia Knoll, Public Policy Specialist, Kansas Catholic Conference, and Glenn Perdue, Private Citizen. Are there questions for the conferees? Representative Orpeza, and then if you'll, I'm sorry, Representative Reese. Well, I just look at her automatically now.
I know, she's right there. She's in your line of sight.
Well, I think she's learning from me to ask questions. Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my question is for Mackenzie Haddix. Thank you for your testimony today. My question is in regards to rating, why the women are having abortions. And then you talked about data collection. And from my standpoint, I do have an academic background. And so for me, it sounds like, at least reading through this bill, what is the intent of this data collection, number one? I have a couple, sorry, it's multifactorial, so multi. So number one, the intent behind the data collection. And then number two, is it your stance to have public dollars used for doing a potentially very large research project in the state of Kansas?
So I'll answer your first question first. Look, the court has already spoken on this issue in Kansas. What we're here to say is that if true choice is to truly exist. Every woman should have the opportunity to examine all of her options, and we know that through data, there's real information that helps us gain a better understanding of why women are choosing abortion. And so why don't we work together to address this issue to provide a safety net for both women and families? And that is the intent of this bill. To your second question, I just would reiterate that the KDHE already has a process in place for how they collect this information, and this would just add what the revisor has already stated.
A point of clarification. Okay, so my clarification is when you rank why you're doing something that you're doing, you put it in first, second, third. Then that goes into more of a research project in regards to how you're looking at how the population is acting and why they're doing certain things, because we're ranking why the abortion is happening. So you're 1, 2, 3, and now we're at a research level. At least that's my interpretation of this. And then for a research, you have to give consent, number 1. And then for number 2, if you decline, we don't keep track of that in an academic setting. When patients say they don't want to participate, it's okay, thank you very much, we appreciate you listening to our spiel, and go on with the day. But the way I read this bill is that it's requiring both without consent.
I would defer to the revisor on this, but my answer to that is, again, that in order to truly address the needs of women in Kansas, we need to know the reasons why women are pursuing abortion so we can offer solutions to help them.
Okay, thank
Thank you.
Representative Reese?
My question is for Brittany Jones. Oh, sorry. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, thank you.
Let me move over so I can see.
I know, I'm going to have to play a little bit of this game.
It's David's face here. Sorry, I'm short.
Try to accommodate.
Sorry, not sorry, I'm short. So I was just curious about, just looking at this list of questions. Which of those questions aren't already being asked by KDHE?
Brittany Jones with Kansas Family Voice. Thank you for having me, Chairman. So those questions are not currently part of our report. If you're talking about, let me pull up my statute so I don't reference the wrong section. If you're talking about the top of page 2 and sections or subsection C, those are questions that are not currently being asked. So we have some data that we're collecting currently, but it's incomplete as to really getting to the reasons why a woman might be choosing abortion. And it could be multi-factor, which is why it's listed the way that it is, so that she can, if she chooses, because she can decline, if she chooses, she can let them know what has the most weight in her decision.
Follow-up, please. Thank you, Madam Chair, for the follow-up. Did KDHE approach you and ask you to present this bill, to ask the extra questions?
No.
No, okay. One last one. Thank you, Madam Chair.
It won't be your last one, but go ahead.
I know, that's true. So I'm just kind of wondering about what the end game is with asking these questions. So it feels like to me, or it seems to me, that your organization is asking the state to collect information that, one, the state isn't asking for and doesn't seem to need, but for some reason your organization does. Am I correct in
This
that?
feels very similar to the question that was just asked of the other proponent of this bill.
Yeah.
And so there would not be a report if this body did not create the statute in the first place to ask these questions. So this is a report that the legislative body has requested and has dictated KDHE to create so that this body can have information about how to best meet women's needs. I think our intent has been really clear in our testimony. Our intent is to help women and to help other nonprofits, this body, others, the public know best how to help women who are in need and who are in difficult pregnancies oftentimes. And so it is truly service to the public, this sort of information, this sort of data.
Just feels really intrusive to me, but I hear what you're saying. Thank you, Brittany.
Representative Barth.
I'm sorry, I didn't do this earlier. Question for Brittany.
Actually, it was for Mackenzie, but she,
Okay.
so I was going to have her come back up.
All right, thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
I tried
Thank you,
not to
Madam
do
Chair.
musical chairs, so that,
I
no, that
know,
was
but-
my fault.
That's okay. Thanks, Mackenzie. I already heard from Brittany Jones and Erica. They mentioned what their question is. And I know that their surveys and things like this get asked, even of our children in schools on a regular basis about death and suicide. So I know we have a lot of questions. And one of the things I came across that was wondering if there whether this would divulge personal information in abortion reporting. And I already heard from the other two what they think on that, but I also would have you please clarify as well.
Yes, Mackenzie Haddix, Kansans for Life. Let's be very clear. No personally identifying information is part of this proposal. But your question raises a great point. If opponents to this bill are concerned with abortion clinics and abortionists leaking private information to the public, then the legislature ought to take a look at that in the future. Thank you.
Committee, are there further questions? Representing, is your question, who's your question for? You want to come back up here and, all right, Brittany, you get Brittany, Representing Hasswood.
Lovely.
Short straw.
Hi, I was just curious kind of on the same, I have a master's in public health, so I'm thinking this academically too, and we're adding more questions. How are these questions formulated? Are they modeled off something else, or was it like a coalition of folks?
There's a lot of people who are interested in this sort of information and making sure we're meeting women where they are. So it's been, as far, I don't know where every single question came from because it's really been a lot of different entities that are looking for ways to better meet women where they are.
So it's not modeled off like an academic type of setting or another
Not that I'm aware of.
state's question? Okay.
I mean, of course, no legislation pretty much ever is completely new to that body. So I'm sure that some of the questions have come from other states, but it's not a copy and paste from anywhere that I know of.
And one more question, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
What is the medical or patient benefit of increasing amount of these questionnaires, especially during this vulnerable time for women?
So, I mean, women in these scenarios, first of all, question, when we go to a doctor, we get asked questions about our mental health, all sorts of things, and it may not necessarily pose a specific benefit to you at that specific time, but it can down the road help that doctor help others know how to come alongside you in whatever situation you are in. And some of these questions help ensure that laws are being followed to protect women.
Okay, thank you.
Representative, I have Orpeza first, and then I'll come back to you, Representative McDonald. Representative Orpeza. And whose is yours for?
I have to ask a question in order to know who to ask the
Okay.
question to.
All right.
Who is the young woman on WebEx? Is she
Erica?
the national person? I thought there was someone with a listing with a national.
Legal Counsel Alliance Defending Freedom.
So she would be the
Yes.
national person. Okay, when we get to the WebEx young woman-
Erica?
Sorry, thank you.
Is she still with us?
Yes, I am. I can wait until WebEx questions or whenever's the appropriate time.
All right, well, no, Representative Orpeza does have a question for you, Erica.
Okay.
Go
ahead, Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Erica, for your testimony. From a national perspective, we had heard earlier if this was from another representative, if this was a format that is going out, is this particularly in Kansas because of last August 2nd of 2022? Is this being offered in other states that have restricted abortion?
So currently, 46 states and the District of Columbia require hospitals, facilities, physicians, and other abortion providers to submit regular and confidential reports to the state about the abortions occurring in that state. What this bill is doing, which is requiring reporting of the reasons a woman obtains abortion, 16 states similarly require providers to give information about the patient's reasons for seeking abortion. And the demographic information that's collected under subsection 5 is really routine. It's very run-of-the-mill. Those questions are asked to a patient anytime you enter a doctor's office. And the reason here is really because the state has an interest in information that can help it promote and protect maternal health and ensure better health outcomes for women. So that's the reason here, and other states are similarly collecting this information.
I have a point of clarification. So you said 16 other states. Are those states complete abortion bans?
I am not certain at the moment. I don't have I don't have the list of all those states in front of me, and I would be happy to confirm that information if the committee would like me to report back about that information.
And then, I'm sorry, one additional question. Are they a rank? Is it ranking the questions as to why the abortions are performed? Is it truly apples to apples?
As far as the other reporting, the other states that have similar reporting requirements, I'm not exactly sure if they're ranking it in that way, but I think the ranking here is really just to give the Kansans an idea of where are their efforts and resources going to be best served and most fruitful, addressing really the most important and prevalent concerns for women who are seeking abortion.
Okay, thank you.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is also for Erica. Given the title of your organization having the words defending freedom in it, I was pretty surprised to see your stance on this. I would think that you would be opposed to forcing women to disclose information that's private. Can you recognize the cognitive dissonance in your stance?
Well, I'm here testifying as a constitutional expert. We support the constitutionality of this bill in that it is legally sound, and the bill is rationally related to promoting Kansas's state interests in public health and welfare. But as a policy matter, we generally do support policies that promote maternal health and safety.
Just one follow-up statement, Madam Chair, if you will. Abortion is a routine, safe medical procedure, and when you keep bringing up maternal health, I think that that's a little disingenuous. It infers that abortions are in some way unsafe for mental health. So I'll leave it at that for now, but I appreciate your answers.
Representative Clayton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question is for Mackenzie. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate this. So if I could have everyone focus on page 3, in particular subsections 7 and 9. So one of the things that was mentioned was the privacy of the patients, right? But 7 and 9 cover whether crimes were committed against these individuals. And so I'm just trying to follow this to its logical endpoint. If you had a woman or a girl that was the victim of a reported, whether it's domestic violence, rape, that sort of thing, wouldn't it stand to reason that, so if there was someone who was a victim of child rape, say by, the creepy stepfather or what have you, and then that person comes in and seeks care, well then how many, I hope that it's very minimal, but how many reported child rapes do we have? And then someone could indeed connect the dots if that person did answer there. So what are some of the extra levels of protection that we could provide? Because even, if someone is the victim of that terrible crime as a child, they should be able to go on, seek therapy, and heal and live a full adult life without having their privacy invaded because they were the victim of a crime. So, but if they have to report in here that they would, don't you think that people could connect the dots and see that converging data and then figure out that it was indeed that person? How do we protect them?
I would, again, can I get back to you on that question, please? I don't have the answer for you today. Thank you.
Committee, are there further questions? All right, seeing none, committee, we have That was the list of our proponents. Now we have Taylor Morton, Policy Analyst, Planned Parenthood, Great Plains, vote as an opponent. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the committee. My name is Taylor Morton. I'm with Planned Parenthood Great Plains Votes. I'm here in a strong opposition today to House Bill 2749. This bill would force patients not only to list but rank the reasons they are getting an abortion. House Bill 2749 does absolutely nothing to protect patient safety and is motivated solely by anti-abortion stigma and the desire to harass, intimidate, and shame providers and patients in Kansas. And in cases of sexual assault, rape, and incest, these questions could severely re-traumatize survivors, all as a means of scoring political points. Kansans have made it abundantly clear that they do not want politicians in their exam rooms, and public support for abortion access in our state is broad, and this bill directly ignores the will of Kansans by stigmatizing abortion patients and providers. Existing law already requires reporting by abortion providers, reporting that is already medically unnecessary and burdensome, and House Bill 2749 goes even further, requiring patients to ask about the reasons they are seeking an abortion provides no benefit whatsoever to patient safety, like I said. All it does is undermine the patient-provider relationship and create serious barriers to open and honest conversations about care. Patients seeking literally any other form of necessary health care are not and would never be subject to such intrusive and personal questioning. Nor are pregnant people subject to such questioning when they decide to carry a pregnancy to term. There's simply no reason for the state to demand and collect this deeply personal information from patients. Abortion is a crucial component of comprehensive sexual and reproductive health, and those who provide and receive this necessary care should not be subject to state-imposed hurdles that are medically unnecessary, inaccurate, and immensely harmful. And as has been mentioned already, abortion is one of the safest medical procedures performed in the United States, with patients experiencing major complications less than 1% of the time. So again, I reiterate that this bill does nothing to protect patient safety. House Bill 2749 only serves to stigmatize abortion and abortion providers, and I strongly urge the committee to vote against this bill. Thank you, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. Next committee, I have Amber Sellers, Director of Advocacy, Trust Women Foundation. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Amber Sellers. I'm the Director of Advocacy for Trust Women Foundation. Trust Women is a comprehensive reproductive clinic that provides comprehensive reproductive health care services and gender-affirming care services to individuals not only in Kansas, but also in Oklahoma. I stand here today to strongly oppose HB 2749 and what we see as an attempt by the legislature to not only over-police but underserve individuals and their families as it comes to addressing reproductive health care and equity in our state. HB 2749 is constitutionally problematic. It creates unnecessary burden in the normal provision of abortion care that our providers offer on a day-to-day basis to patients. The right to an abortion is like the right to freedom of speech. It is that. There is no reason needed. To ask a Kansan to justify their right to freedom of speech, they would mostly scoff at it. So from the standpoint of our providers, I wanted to go through a couple of pieces as it relates to the survey questions that were provided in the statute. I do want to note that one of the conferees stated that there are several states that do have reporting, and I want to make sure that we are very clear about what the definition of reporting is. There are several states that do have reasoning questions. They're not ranked. And to be able to define what reporting is, you would have to look at each one of those individual reports. And I don't think there's any conferee that has done that, because none of those questions are restrictive as the ones that are presented in 2749. But from the standpoint of our providers, these questions are confusing and they're stigmatizing. They lack the relevance and they're medically unnecessary. They're deeply invasive. The financial and domestic circumstances that are added are not questions that you see in normal reporting. When I go to the doctor, my doctor does not ask me how I plan to financially pay. That's something that's discussed, but it's not a reporting piece to say that intrudes on my personal care and how my care is delivered. And then it lacks germaneness, and it also could potentially impact the quality of care, whether it's the individual that's at the front desk or a provider. There was a Guttmacher Institute. The Guttmacher Institute in 2005 conducted a very large-scale research study on abortion care and the reasons for it. And several of the reasons that are in HB 2749 mimic some of those questions there. Now, those who are not familiar with Guttmacher Institute, this is a very large large abortion research organization that provides very nonpartisan research. They're the ones that's doing the deep dive and doing the policy, doing the work to identify comprehensive, inclusive policies around reproductive health care as well as abortion care. So we feel like the contents of 2749 under question are better suited for an opt-in survey outside of the standard scope of care and standards that are provided in an abortion clinic. We know that there's no clear articulation or rationale as to how these questions would benefit Kansans. We know from a regional perspective, there are abortion bans in Texas and Oklahoma, and we know that the impact of these abortion bans have impacted how individuals receive very timely and comprehensive and equitable reproductive health care. It's created a crisis in our region, and so these questions do not serve to being able to solve that policy crisis. A biannual report by KDHE won't even fix the injustice that we're seeing right now. So as a strong advocate and an organization that participates in collective comprehensive maternal health and reproductive health conversations in our state, we believe that good reproductive health policies should address disparities and improve health outcomes. This does not do it. So we stand here in support of HB 2750, which you heard on Monday. We stand that you remove barriers to contraceptive access, including emergency contraception, and we ask that the state looks into addressing Black infant mortality as well as maternal mortality numbers, as we know that those numbers are on the increase, and Kansas finds itself having poor health outcomes for Black, Indigenous, and Hispanic mothers and babies. And we need to expand reproductive health services to restrict laws and regulations that impact one's ability to have choice in their comprehensive reproductive health care journey. So I stand here to you today to offer you sound, effective solutions, and what is included in HB 2749 is not it, unfortunately. But I do thank you for this time and stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you. And actually, Amber, you're our last opponent in person. I will have a question here for you. Committee, you will note that you have several written only in opposition to the bill. And I think I understood you to say that you were expressing concern about a section of the bill violating the Constitution. Can you point that out to me, please?
No, we were just saying that 2749 is constitutionally problematic and that there's an unnecessary burden on the provision of health care. The idea is that we know that abortion is a constitutional right. October 2nd, 2022, that was voted on by individuals in Kansas that said that they believe that the Kansas Constitution gives them a right to an abortion. So the idea is that there's no other necessary information needed, that it's an unnecessary burden to try to include additional survey questions as such to provide a rationale as to why an individual would want an abortion. The need to an abortion is a need to an abortion. We don't ask people to justify a need to freedom of speech, so there's no need to justify a reason for an abortion.
Is it possible that a woman chooses an abortion because she didn't know that there might be other services available to her out there?
You know,
wouldn't that be a good reason to know, why she has chosen abortion, and because she didn't know that she had other choices. She didn't know that there were other paths for her to take.
Correct, and then we have those conversations, and our coalitions have those conversations, and we leave it to institutions such as the Guttmacher Institution to continue to do comprehensive studies on that. So we're not opposed to surveys and reputable institutions that do inclusive, nonpartisan surveys to have that, because then we can use that to drive the discussions between our coalitions.
So then would it be your position, and then I guess this question would also go to Taylor, are you opposed to all of the questions that are in the bill?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Barth, is your question for her or? Huh? Previous? Okay. Anyone else have a question? All right, Representative Haswood. For Amber, I couldn't find your name down here real quick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to ask probably the similar question to you. You know, with all this, do you see a medical or patient benefit of increasing the annual reporting?
No, I think if I had to surmise or hypothesize, none of our other abortion-related reports are done biannually. So our pregnancy maintenance is not done biannually. It's done annually. It does have a date, but it's done annually. The only thing I can think of as to the rationale for a biannual report is maybe an attempt to try to create a narrative around the rationales that would be proposed if a patient was to opt in or have to answer the survey. So I think it may be an attempt to create a narrative that doesn't necessarily exist when we know what the bigger issue is.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I see that we had the crossed out of annually to biannually, so thank you for addressing that as well.
All right, I've got Berquist and Orpeza is your question for Amber. Huh? All right, I had Orpeza first and then Representative Berquist. Representative Orpeza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your testimony. You mentioned a research. So I'm going to ask you about, in your research, and did you review that paper?
I read most of it.
That's okay.
It is old, and I will say there's been talks of revisiting that, and we support the Guttmacher Institute in doing such.
Okay, so then my question is, in that paper, the bipartisan paper, did it record people who did not participate?
There was an opt-in, so as far as knowing the specifics of that or what the recording was, I don't have that number. I can definitely get it to you.
So it's a yes or no. And in your research, or that paper from the organization, was there, I'm assuming they followed RBI protocol and did consent, and they understood that their information would be used and published?
Correct.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, my last question. In regards to that, who paid for that? Who supports this, that organization?
Guttmacher, I
Guttmacher.
can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay.
I can find out for you. But.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Berquist.
Yes, ma'am. You mentioned constitutional concerns and about asking questions and such, but also that you got most of your information from the Guttmacher Institute, and with the sensitive nature of choosing whether or not you're going to get an abortion or going in to get an abortion and not being asked questions, where would the Guttmacher Institute come in except for after the fact of the abortion?
The Guttmacher is an independent organization, so a person chooses outside of their care whether or not they wanted to participate in that research. The research is, I think, having questions as such that are very intrusive, that are not as intrusive in any of the other states that have reporting data, it impacts the narrative of the patient between the quality of care and the relationship that they have with their provider. So as I said, this is from the standpoint of our providers. None of these questions should impact the quality of care. They don't impact the quality of care, but that could have an impact on the patient and their perception of the care that's being given to them. And we don't want our patients to feel that what they're having done is being recorded for any type of nefarious purposes or that. So we know that if it's for them to do this, it should be their choice independent of the care that they're receiving.
86 years ago, my mother made a decision not to get an abortion, and she had to make that decision on her own because the society was very, very difficult for her to deal with around it. She and the Lord made that decision. She decided to have the baby adopted, and she poured her heart out. She needed to pour her heart out to somebody, so she poured that heart out to her baby in a diary and left that baby the diary. She needed to be able to share that, needed the ability, and someone to care to actually want to know that information. That's why I think it's so important for them to be able to be expressed to, and the biggest thing that's happened in their life in their 12 or 14 or 16 or 18 years.
Of course.
And just my thought. Thank you.
No, and I don't disagree. I think that's why we have institutions like Guttmacher that can do that, and so that they have a space to have that. So we hear that, and we apply that to the work that we do as well. As a licensed ambulatory surgical center, we have standards and regulations that we have to uphold, and we do that to the T. So I believe that there is a place and space for that, even more now in 2024, where we have multiple states that have abortion bans, and there are individuals like your mother who struggle to find access within their state and have other barriers that were created for them prior to abortion bans. So as long as we can have an independent entity such as Guttmacher or any other that wants to stand to the rise to that standard, we'll support that. And anyone that's part of the coalition that we're a part of that is addressing comprehensive reproductive and sexual health, they would say that as well. So I appreciate you sharing that, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Amber, you just made a comment that these questions can impact the care of the patients. How did the questions impact the care of the patient?
I say they could potentially impact, because you're including them into the standard routine of care. So there are questions that are asked, and we have no issues with the current questions on the abortion report. The questions that are outlined and are proposed in this bill could have a potential impact on a patient in their standard of care and their process of care that day. So if it's important that these questions be answered, we ask that they be answered in a survey setting outside of the standard of care or the day of care.
Right. I still don't understand how it impacts their care.
How would it impact their care?
How it impacts their care.
I think there's a presumptive narrative that any individual personally, I would say if I was to see these, that I would be wondering why are these questions important, and why does it make a difference what my first, second, or third option is? And why would a doctor need to know that? Or why would a provider need to know that? Mm-hmm. So I think it creates something, a narrative or something, an idea. It could change it. It could impact a person's thoughts in the process. So, and I don't think we want to do that presumptively.
All right, Representative Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amber, in your line of work, working in advocacy for women, working in the clinic, do you get information from, let's say, domestic violence shelters or other organizations that are advocates for women, work with women, and they give you information like, here are some of the consequences of rape. Here are some of the things that women are having to deal with because of a rape, because there's domestic violence going on in their home. So essentially, getting answers to all these questions through other sources, because there's research, I know there's research out there where the answers to all these questions are already out there.
Well, like I said, there are coalitions that speak, whether it's our domestic and intimate partner shelters, our Two-Spirit LGBTQ community, our maternal health, our infant health, our breastfeeding coalitions, all of these entities, we have relationships with them because we understand it's inclusive to comprehensive health, period. Reproductive and sexual health is one aspect, one planet in the universe of health. So we're constantly conversing with each other, sharing information in our fields so that we can help connect the pieces and create sound policies. And if it rises to being, if there's rise to a need to be codified in statute, that as well. But we look to that as partners in this work to figure out how can we make the pieces connect together? How can we close barriers? How can we increase positive outcomes, health outcomes in disparate communities? So we're constantly working on that already as a coalition. If someone, and again, as a coalition, we didn't bring this bill to the legislature. So apparently someone brought it to you without bringing it to coalitions that already exist that are looking at these items.
Thank you.
How does the Guttmacher Institute find these women that have had abortions?
I think there's the survey questioning, so I imagine that they would have to ask if the person had an abortion. I can't speak to that. That would be a Guttmacher question.
I'm just trying to figure out how they, is someone telling them that they had abortion? That these women have abortion? Are they sharing that information?
I imagine someone at Guttmacher could
So perhaps
explain
one
that.
one of your clinics could be sharing that information with Guttmacher, that these would be the women to contact?
We don't share PII, so, I mean, maybe a pregnancy crisis center, but not us.
Another comment that you made was, why would finding out why a woman was having an abortion be important? And in my thoughts, I'm thinking it could be that she's having an abortion because she doesn't know that she has any other alternatives. She doesn't know that there are financial resources. She doesn't know that there are resources out there to help her get that baby to full term. So wouldn't it make sense to want to know why she's having that abortion? And if she, lists just those two questions or concerns there alone, to say, well, there are resources for you, and you could contact A, B, C, and D.
Right.
In order to carry your baby to full term. Wouldn't that be important?
Well, I can't get into the mind of an individual, and I won't even try to speculate that. All I know is that the right to an abortion is a right to an abortion. And organizations like Guttmacher and other nonpartisan entities out there who are doing such research that HB 2749 attempts to codify in an executive agency to do is already happening, and it's already giving us information, and it's working with coalitions and organizations who are doing this work to bring policies and opportunities to the legislature. As I stated, expedited partner therapy. That is something that's good sound policy that could be codified in statute that could help the overall comprehensive landscape of reproductive health, removing barriers to contraception, as I stated, expanding care services to midwifery and doulas, allowing them to collect Medicaid to be Medicaid providers. That's part of birth equity. All of these things are part of reproductive health. That speaks to your question. I think it speaks to a more ancillary piece about resources,
I would disagree
funding.
with you that it speaks to my question. Because if a young woman has decided to have an abortion because she didn't know that she had other choices, and then she has that abortion because she went to an abortion clinic, I realize it's a right. I get that.
Right.
So
And
I'm not
choices are
arguing
right.
that with you. That's not the argument that we're having here today, whether it's right or not. I believe it's wrong, but it's legal. Okay? We agree with that. What do you think might happen, and you probably don't want a hypothetical on this either, is what her mental health state would be if she found out after she has that abortion that no one in that clinic told her that she had options, that there were places that she could go to help carry that baby to term. There were financial resources
So, Madam
for
Chair, I
her.
want to make sure I understand you, because there was something you said in your comment that, are you projecting that abortion care providers are not giving information or supposed to give information? I wasn't sure about what.
Well, you said that finding out why, so one of the questions being is finding out why she wants to have an abortion could impact her care.
Right, in this setting.
Okay, I guess it's an either or. You are either asking why she's chosen to have abortion, or you're not asking why she's having an abortion.
Based on the questions that are presented in HB 2749.
No, I'm not talking about what's presented here before us. I think that for any healthcare provider, whatever profession that they're in, it's important to know why this individual, this patient, is before them.
So you're speaking to something not germane to
No, it's
the
very
bill.
germane because you said that these questions impact their care.
Correct.
Now, I still don't understand that one. But I don't understand why finding out why the woman is chosen to walk into an abortion clinic isn't an important question to ask. I don't understand why that's not an important question for her to be asked.
I think it's an important question. That's a question that's answered outside of the standard of care. We can't hypothetically on a standard of care. So what you're asking to is indicative of the questions, but the questions should not be part of the standard of care. We have organizations and institutions that are asking these questions, and they're getting the answers, but they're not part of the standard of
after she's
care.
had her abortion. But I know what the mental health is of a woman that didn't know she had choices for other paths that did have an abortion, and that many of them live with that for the rest of their lives. Some have the
and there's
abortion,
many that
don't think twice. They'll have a second, they'll have a third, they'll have a fourth, etc. They don't think twice about that life. But there's a lot of women that had they known they had choices to get financial assistance or encouragement to maybe at least carry it to the point to where the baby lives and they give it up for adoptions, if they find out later that they walked into an abortion clinic and they weren't even given any of that information, it's just like, you've walked into a clinic for an abortion, you're going to get an abortion. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. That's what I'm hearing from you, Amber, and that concerns me.
No, and I think it's a matter to say it's about someone's life. It's about someone's choice. So I can't speak, and you can't speak, and I don't think any of the committee members or any of the conferees can speak to what brings a person in, and we can't make assumptions on what they do or don't know. And I think what the question you're posing is a question that our coalition discusses on a pretty active basis. And I think if it's a question that the legislature seeks, then I would ask that maybe we look into a task force that can elevate what reproductive health care looks like in our state, and do it in a way that we can ask those questions out openly without there being a sense that there's something nefarious involved. And there's too many elements based on who is presenting, conferees, and how this bill is laid out, that I don't think the question you seek and the answer you seek and what it is that we stand in opposition to will get answered.
Amber, I think I can speak to it because I was one of those women. And had I walked into that clinic and been given the information that there were alternatives, I would not have had my abortion. So I can speak to that. So you did make an assumption that no one in this room can speak to that.
Well,
and that was done.
No one can speak to the greater good.
Do not talk over the top of me. Because when you are talking, you are not listening, which tells me you're not willing to listen. I will not talk over the top of you either. I don't allow that in this committee with any conferees, whether I agree with them or I disagree with them. I expect decorum.
Definitely.
But I do understand. And that was in my early 20s. And I live with that today, and I will be 69 in March. And it hurts and it breaks my heart, and it's what has made me a fighter for the pro-life movement. And one of the things that I hear from clinics, and I've got 26 years of experience up here in this building, is that it's just about a choice. Abortion clinics don't want to talk about a life. And several years ago, when Dr. Tiller was in operation, he invited legislators into his clinic to visit and to tour and to take on the profile of a third trimester abortion. So I went through the process with him on that. And the thing that was really sad when I did that was when we got to the end of the tour, we went into a little room, and the baby that I aborted in the third trimester was dressed in clothing so that I could bond. Well, it wasn't a live baby, it was a doll. But we're walking through the profile because I took on that profile of that patient he had. And he's in the room with us. was because he thought women should bond with their third trimester babies. That was part of his process. And I asked him specifically, I said, what would have happened to me had I carried this baby to full term? Well, nothing would have happened to you, but the hospitals would have taken this baby off. You wouldn't have seen this baby. The baby was going to die, which he was probably correct on that, because we know that a lot of times. But you would never see that baby, so you wouldn't get to bond with that baby while it was alive. Well, I'm not going to be able to bond with an aborted baby that's sitting here in front of me. So I went to the NICU of the hospital in my area to find out what is their procedures. And it happened to be a Catholic hospital, and they don't perform abortions. And they said, no, when we know that that's happening, we're going to, if that mother chooses to bond with that baby, we're going to give her an experience and an opportunity. We're not going to rush them off. So I don't have a lot of faith in the trust of what is said or not said or advice that's given in these clinics. I also remember testimony many, many years ago from the representative from Dr. Tiller's clinic when she talked about she didn't know what would have happened if this 13-year-old girl's dad had not brought her in from Missouri to get an abortion. The first question proposed to her was, well, you called law enforcement, right? Well, we did, and she paused because she just realized the mistake that she was about to make was if she didn't call law enforcement, 9 times out of 10, a 13-year-old girl being brought into an abortion clinic out of state by a father, what is the first thing that would come to your mind? Would you like to answer that? Oh, you don't want to, Amber, do you?
No,
you don't
not
want to
this
answer it
time.
because the first question, I'm not in the medical field, and I don't need to be for that, is incest. But law enforcement wasn't involved. So I don't have a lot of faith in what is being discussed. If I did, I could feel more comfortable with what's happening. I think what happens with the abortion industry is that it doesn't want to listen or show any flexibility in trying to find some solutions for us to come together. Will we come together on everything? Absolutely not. Because if I had my druthers, and this is going to make some of my friends out here in the audience perhaps unhappy, I would have lived with the exceptions that we had. I would ban abortion except for the 3 exceptions we had. But that's not what the abortion clinic wants. They want it on demand. And now Kansas is known as the abortion state. Then that's not something for us to be proud of.
Well, Madam Chair, I am proud that, and I will say, one, to say no one can speak to, I will retract that to say, well, there is an anecdotal story that can be told for individuals that have individual experiences with the process. We can't, as a whole, speak to it. And we can't speak, we have to speak on assumptions because we don't know the thoughts of everyone, and we can't make those assumptions for everyone. So, but I would say that the industry has changed a great deal. What may have occurred at the time that you had your procedure is not that. So, and I will stand on that, and I would say anyone that knows the abortion clinics that provide health care to individuals, we see this as holistic, and we're here to provide comprehensive care. And I'll stand on that.
Well, and Amber, you also mentioned, it's about, reproductive rights, but reproductive means you produce. And if you don't ask these women why, they're in there. And I'm going to wrap this up because I understand where
reproductive health speaks to the global.
where we're at with it. But I don't know if they're getting all of the proper information. We had legislation last year. We're actually going to hear it again this Friday about pregnancy resource centers. And the questions that were brought up in this committee was, well, how do we know those women aren't being coerced into actually having their babies? Well, I asked the same question of the abortion industry. How do I know these women are not being coerced into actually having an abortion when they'd like to find another alternative? I don't, because of the secrecy that has clouded within the abortion industry.
Oh.
Because we don't get some of the information. So I'm not going to continue to dwell on it, but I
No,
appreciate
I would argue
you
different, but I appreciate it, Madam
having
Chair.
the dialogue with me here.
Thank you.
Let's see,
Anytime.
I've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up our day. Representative Bergquist, and then Representative Bueller.
Amber, I just want to say thank you for standing at the mic for this long and for taking the questions, because it's not easy. It's not easy for us to ask some of the questions, but I just, as I listen to the dialogue of not being intrusive, and I look at all of us in this room, and without some sort of a choice to be made, it's potential that none of us would have ever been here. And I'm glad that we're here. I'm glad we're here having this conversation. I'm glad to meet Amber. I'm glad to meet everybody here. But I'm glad to have the opportunity to meet you.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that a choice was made. So thank you.
Yes. As a local official from an elected official to another, I appreciate that.
All right, Representative Bueller, and that'll be our final question.
Real quick, thank you, Madam Chair.
Or comment, whichever.
You referenced the Guttmacher Institute. I'll be honest, I've never heard of them, but you referenced their study is from 2005, so that's 19 years old.
Yeah.
And then you also referenced them in the vein of being bipartisan and nonpartisan. So how do you define them? Why should I believe that they are nonpartisan? Or how do you define the nonpartisan element of that? And is there another institute that you would say is also nonpartisan or bipartisan on this issue?
I mean, the Guttmacher is one that we tend to go to enough. I would say they're politically
Who defines them as nonpartisan or bipartisan?
I would say that they're neutral. So the idea is that they're looking straight at, this is from a research institute. There's no political sway in any way to the work that they do. And I think there are organizations in other fields as it relates to healthcare or education that we know to be reputably sound in their research, and Guttmacher is one of those as it relates to healthcare.
Are they certified by the AMA or anything like that? Honestly, I'm just trying to understand who they
find that
are.
for you.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to find that for you.
Okay. All right. In the interest of time, that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, committee, that's going to close our hearing on House Bill 2749. It will be my work both of the bills that we heard today. Hopefully we can do that tomorrow. It's one of the reasons that I tried to kind of keep Tuesday as flexible as I could. My goal is for us to advance all of our bills out by Tuesday afternoon, but it could be, or Monday afternoon, it could be that we'll meet on Tuesday. Because if we can't finish it up Tuesday afternoon, guess what? We will be back in here at 5 o'clock on Tuesday evening. So that, I know you're really excited, Dr. Epley. So I just want to give you guys a heads up. That's not like a threat. I just, as we take and move forward, just make sure that you've got any amendments on any of the bills that we're hearing so that you're prepared when you come in committee. So committee, we are adjourned till 1:30 tomorrow.